Welcome to Local Leverage, your competitive edge in business. Today, you're going to get a real kick out of this show. Our guest is the founder of Lamassu Leads. It's a 200-person sales call center in Colombia that delivers motivated seller leads to real estate investors across the U.S. His team generates millions in deal volume, not with gimmicks, but with skill, structure, and relentless consistency. He's also a sought-after keynote speaker known for delivering high-impact presentations on sales mastery, culture building, and performance psychology. Whether you're a solo closer or scaling a remote team, this episode is packed with gold on building trust, running world-class sales ops, and converting leads at scale. Get ready, because we're dropping right into the sales floor of Lamassu Leads with the man himself, Scott Morse. Scott, great to have you on the show.
Mark, dude, I sincerely appreciate it, man. I love talking about sales and lead generation, so it's like fish in water right now, baby.
That's good. I know that everybody's probably realizing your background right now with your sales bullpen and can hear the energy in your organization. Yeah, that's fantastic stuff.
Thank you, brother.
Hey, let's just talk a little bit about kind of how you got to this point. I mean, I know you started in sales yourself, and then you moved into real estate investing, and then ultimately realized that either you had the goods or saw a gap in the space and said, I can fill this with my own sales organization. Tell me about that journey.
Yeah, so, well, I came from my mom and dad. No. So, like, 20 years old, man, I was, my parents got pregnant at 16 and married at 17, Mark.
Wow.
And so, like, we lived in one house for 18 years, inner city Richmond, and Richmond, Virginia, by the way.
Okay.
And so, like, my dad was a roofer. My mom's a stay-at-home mom. I didn't know anybody with money my whole life. And then I ended up installing security systems, like ADT. You know what ADT is,
sure.
Mark?
Yeah, sure.
And one day I was installing security systems at this big, huge, like, beautiful property. And I didn't know what a sales bullpen looked like. But I was in there, and there was all these kids wearing ties and Mercedes outside and all this stuff. And I was just like, as I was teaching the guy to use the pad, I was just like, it's 20 years old. I was like, bro, what do you guys do here? He was like, we sell timeshare. I said, oh, what's that? And so literally a week later, I was in their office, and at 20 years old, I did baptism by fire in a really, really shady, if you will, I think, industry. But the sales mechanics they taught me from like 20 to 23 ultimately led to another level of high ticket sales, and ultimately to where I did really, really, really successful. And then I stumbled into real estate like 5 years ago after already making a shit ton of money selling leads to attorneys nationwide. And so like I just for 24 years have surrounded myself with high ticket sales and high velocity lead generation.
That's awesome. And so, you pretty quickly then determined, like, you know, high ticket is where you want to be. Is that just kind of natural where you're gravitated to, or did you realize that was where the most leverage was?
You know, I'm a fan of mousetraps, and I always use this analogy. It's just like, who's got the best mousetrap? And that's why I really love being in real estate, and I think that I'm just a passing tourist through the real estate. I look at it as what mousetrap is going to produce the most for my input. So what's in place I can get the most output. After this podcast, you might be like, hey man, we got this new AI software where we're helping new businesses. I'll literally turn a light switch off tonight and turn a new one on tomorrow out of real estate. I'm agnostic. I have no loyalty to real estate. I have loyalty to my time and efforts. And as long as it's not hurting somebody, I just want to get my highest exchange in cash for that time and effort.
I love that. For those that don't know, too, we both came across each other. You were speaking at a Collective Genius event in Dallas just a couple weeks ago. That's where I saw you and was super impressed and said, I got to get this guy on the show.
Thank you.
So one of the things I love about your approach, I think you've said, is like you see sales as a sport. And that whole idea of approaching it like an athlete as a sport really intrigues me. I'm curious, how would you draw the parallels? I mean, obviously there's like, you know, doing a lot of practice and being ready for game day, but I'd love to hear it from you. Like, how do you see that parallel?
I think it's less a sport, although I use that to summarize it, and more the difference between an amateur and a professional. Because we can all play sports, right? We can play high school sports, but are we playing at the professional level? And so that's really kind of just where I draw it to. And so I think professionals always review the game tapes. Professionals go back after, they're planning out before. Brady's season doesn't start day one of scrimmage. No, he's months and months and months and months in advance planning and eating right and good sleeping schedules and all those things. So for me, I think it's just a matter of being that high velocity entrepreneur where it's like, okay, my body is my temple, my mind is what's going to drive me in all my conversations today, my goals, my whatever. And so I really try to train these kids here because we got almost 200 kids here that like, hey, listen, I take good human beings and make them better, and then that's how I get great salespeople. So I work more. The tactics are easy. And by the way, we're just lead generating and helping people out of houses. I'm not selling aircraft carriers here. So it's like, this part's easy. I just got to get you to believe in yourself and be resilient to the no's and understand not to shortcut the processes that work. And so that's it. I just think a professional would act in those ways, and so that's the way I try to train them and carry myself.
Yeah, you just dropped a number of things I want to tap into, but maybe the first of which is, these 200 kids. I mean, I've seen your organization. I've seen how you train these people up. Is that what you're looking for as a prototype or as a candidate? Is somebody that's young and hungry with no skills, and you're going to meld them into what you want, or are you looking for somebody that already has some sales skills and then working from there?
I'm an equal opportunity. I really don't carry a preference. Again, it's all about the person. Like, are you a good person? I have a young lady here that used to live in Australia that worked with Jordan Belfort. And here I'm in Colombia, South America. And she's like worked in his office, and she was a great fit. She'd been through some things, and I got a bunch of young kids who will literally just follow any marching order that you give them. So I'll follow everything, but as long as you're a good human being and you accept critique. Like the thing that I trained on today is like, how many of you guys were in the military? Only one guy was ever in the military. So how many of you guys have ever had a personal trainer? And a number of people raised their hand. I was like, you wouldn't want your personal trainer to not push you. Your personal trainer will never help you grow if you don't have a little bit of resentment, like, why does he keep on singling me out? Why is he pushing me, etc.? So they got to understand while we're in here, steel sharpens steel, and this is going to be an environment where we will push on you, not because we dislike you, but we want to make you go further than you would go naturally on your own. And so that's why I don't really care what your background is, as long as you're willing to buy into the ecosystem we have here.
Yeah, that's cool. So for your own journey, I mean, as you went from, oftentimes a really good salesperson does not make a good sales leader, and certainly doesn't then make a great business leader.
Sure.
Were you just naturally good at all of those things, or how did you sharpen your own, blade along the way?
I was really blessed to have a really forgiving boss. So I worked for one guy, his name's Stanley Britt, for 11 years. And that's why I am also a really forgiving boss. Like these young kids, this is their first time being a leader. And if somebody like comes in hungover or does something stupid and they're like, they have no forgiveness. And I'm like, dude, I've cussed out my old boss before. I've left and went for another job and had to beg for my job back. Like I remember what it was like to have to mature. My talent was always further than my maturity was. And so once I got those two together, then it was rocket ships. But I would just say I was able to be inside of a company for 11 years, and I think that I can make pizzas for 10 years and be one of the greatest pizza guys out there. So I think it's just being close to entrepreneurs and seeing the good things and the bad things, and then ultimately being able to say, okay, now it's time for me to insert my product into this process. Because I think once you learn the entrepreneurial process and you have sales skills and marketing skills, that covers both sides of that kind of paradigm there. So I wouldn't say it's natural, but I was just around it long enough to be able to replicate it and then do my version of it, which I hope these kids do. I tell them all the time, like, I can only be as great as myself. With love, you get to study me, and then you get to sprinkle yourself in on top. You have an advantage that I will never have based on this environment because I'm the highest, I'm the tip of the spear here.
I can hear the gongs going off. I love it.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's all good. So were there things in your journey? I mean, you had to have reached like certain inflection points where you realized like, oh man, now I'm running a business. I'm out of my element. I don't know finance, or I don't know marketing, or I don't know HR. How did you approach that? How did you build your team, and what was that sequencing?
So, I don't know. It's a lot of it's trial by, damage, I guess. Like, I've definitely screwed up more than I've gotten it right in regards to personnel management. I realized after probably 3 years of, like, I can't pick the hires. Like, that's not my strong suit because I'll just be sold on everybody. Like, I inherently believe the best of everybody. I'm like, yes, I'm going to believe in you more than you believe in yourself and pull you up. But I don't know, man. I think that it's just been such a 24-year journey, and I'm an avid, voracious reader. And so every entrepreneurial book, every self-help book, I have probably one of the biggest book collections I've ever seen in my personal life. And so like I just got these little nuggets, and every meeting I give, and for years and years and years, I write down my meetings before I go into it. So I have this long reflection of these stuff. And so I don't know, by happen chance or blessings or whatever, I've just been able to collect all these years worth of knowledge and be able to execute on them at any given day.
That's great. How did you settle on Colombia? I think you're west of Bogota. How did you make the transition from Virginia to uprooting and moving to Bogota and then starting your business there?
Yeah. So I went from Virginia to Florida. That's where I had a really big call center focusing in the attorney space, the legal space. Yep. So I had a really big company there assisting customers who felt like they were victims of scams. And I was just essentially a marketing arm for some really powerful attorneys. They got really, really big. Ultimately, it's kind of frowned upon from a bar issue, not a legal issue, but a bar issue when you have marketing departments. We were on Rush Limbaugh. We were on like everywhere. So ultimately, when that sunsetted, I said, okay, I heard about real estate. A good friend of mine was already in the space. I said, I'll partner with you, but let's start outsourcing some of this marketing. Let me go. And I outsourced first Mark to a guy who told me that they were in Costa Rica, but I found out that they were in Egypt later. And that sucked. And then I hired some people in the Philippines, and I swear to God, I heard a chicken in the background while they were talking to one of my customers. And I was just to my business partner, I was like, bro, I can't let these people be my first impression. Like, we're trying to dominate. I can't do this. I felt like my job was harder, and I was taking people away from quality PPC leads to called BS outbound leads. So I was like, dude, give me 6 months. I'm going to go down south. I'm going to set up shop. We're going to create something big, and I'll be back in 6 months. And 5 years later, I'm like, dude, I love this place. I love this place, and my daughters go to a great school. We got more nannies than most people have employees in their company, and it's just great. And I'm really blessed to be a humble guest here.
That's great. So the building, in Colombia, this must have all sorts of different cultural challenges and recruitment challenges. Are most of the folks that work for you Colombians, or are they folks from the States that you're bringing down? How does this work?
So a couple of different things. I would say half of my 100 and some people here have lived in the States at some period of time. So the United States is very unforgiving when it comes to if you're there on a student visa or a work visa. By extending it, if you get a DUI, if you got in trouble, just being a normal 20-year-old kid, you got caught with a little bit of weed, you're out. Also, what I found, which is very unique, is that when their grandmas, grandpas, or family members get sick, they don't care about that American dream anymore. They're coming back home. So they leave part of their heart there, but they got to come here to home because it's just the culture. You would never not be around grandma in her final years like you would be as a U.S. person. So That's why a lot of those kids are here. In regards to the culture thing, I brought a piece of America here, so recruiting's not hard at all. Recruiting is easy because I created an environment, and I'm not the typical gringo who's paying them under the table and trying to scam them and running away, etc. But the cultural differences, for sure, it's baked in a little bit of socialism in this country, just a smidgen, like this much. And it comes to being able to be sick and get paid 60% of your salary. So here under federal law, if my stomach hurts, like in high school, I need a note and I'll just skip school. You can do that here, and me as an employer, I'm required to pay 60% of their salary. So I already pay 40% more than anybody else in town. So it's like, if I can get a job with Scott and be sick, I can make the same as I was making at this other place and not have to work. So once I understood that mechanics, I then kind of adjusted my salary, increased my commissions, made some milestones, and just let them know, hey, we're here for business, and I'll replace your seat with somebody else. I terminated one guy today and one guy yesterday, just because everybody knows this is a team, and you have to now perform to stay, et cetera, et cetera.
So, and that's a pretty normal cycle in sales organizations. You either perform or you don't, and you give people ample opportunity. But what's the average tenure of folks that are on your team? How long do they last before they either move on, and how quickly do you cut line if they're not performing?
Really amazing question. I'm blessed to have people that have been here 4 or 5 years. I have some OGs.
That's great.
We have a whole wing of ours that are called OGs. Some of that is just because this doesn't even really exist in the United States. It damn sure doesn't exist in South America, this environment, this type of office, this type of everything. Some of it's that, I really am a cool place to work, and I try to really pour into these kids every day. I'm like Preacher Morse up front, just trying to lift them up. But I would say, and a tenure typically is, I know we have 6 weeks of training. So my main objective, Mark, is to get them out, the people who won't make it, within that 6 weeks. Yep. I don't want them touching a customer's lead at all for 6 weeks. I put them through a really exhaustive training. But after that, I don't know, I'd say we probably lose 50% after that within 2 to 3 months, because reality sits and it's like, oh, cold calling sucks. It just sucks. So, we have a decent churn, but the good guys stay because they can make nice commissions.
Yeah, makes sense. So, the company is Lamassu Leads. How much of lead generation for you is calls? Are you warming up calls with other things like direct mail or anything, or is it going straight to calls?
No, man, this is pure outbound. We'll do 2.3 million, 2.4 million outbound dials a month out of here. I do have TC, Dispo, I have nurture agents, but everything is really designed. I have my own little investment office I do out of Richmond, Virginia, but the rest of these guys are all providing leads nationwide to our affiliates, some of the same guys that you've met in CG,
sure.
et cetera.
Yeah, interesting. How much of your of this is a framework and process? In other words, when you have these folks that come in, they go through your training, are they required to stick specifically to your process? Do they have latitude? What do you accept? And is that based upon somebody's throughput, or is it just a steady rule?
Yeah, so really phenomenal question. Gosh, you could be in one of our executive meetings. I love this. Really good question. So first off, I crafted this script. I watched it perform. It took a long time. We have a script. On top of every screen, we have objections and rebuttals. You do 2 million dials a month, then what people are going to say on the phone. In regards to the process, you first have to learn and master the process before you can be yourself. I don't want you to be yourself until you have us down. Once you have us down, of course, we want you to dance on the call. We want you to ride the wave between the lines on the script, because that's how personality and commonality and rapport happens. But we won't let them be themselves, if you will, until they've at least mastered our script, our framework, our processes from A to Z. And then once then, hey, rock and roll, man. You still got to always cover the basics. You have to hit every step of our process, but you'll have a lot more lateral movement once you, in fact, have proven you can do it our way.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think as long as you're kind of hitting all the items on the checklist, how you get there is maybe a little bit less prescriptive. So, cold calling is tough, I think, which is why your business exists. A lot of people just don't do this, right? How do you help new folks overcome the fear of it? How do you make it approachable and exciting for them versus just drudgery?
It's a really great question, and I'll try to turn this into how it could be exciting for the person at home who won't be able to respond to what I'm about to say. But, if I had to cold call on Jeff Bezos' yacht, my life would be good. I'd be all right. Yeah. So what I try to, number one, do is just create an environment that counterbalances the suck of being an outbound island. Whether that's beach balls, ringing of the gong, ping pong tournaments, we have arcades here, we have foosball, we're constantly doing cash wheels. We're doing everything to reward you for that pain. And the other part for everybody who's at home is it's gamifying it for yourself, understanding obviously you're going to get more no's than you will a yes. But all you got to do is get your first yes, and now you have your first KPI as a cold caller. Whether that be 3 days, whether that be 450 answers, whether that be 2,000 dials, whatever the metric is, now we have a number. And that's our benchmark. We write it on our glass, we put it on a sticky note on our computer, whatever it may be. And our goal now becomes not necessarily to get the lead, but to beat that KPI that gave us that lead. And then you just kind of move the cheese a little bit, so that way you're not so stressed about this. You're just trying to work the numbers. And once you understand the numbers, then you're never worried about being down and out, because you're like, oh my God, I went over my number, and now I'm due for 2 leads. And just like math, it will happen. Even if you missed your KPI, as long as you stay consistent. And that's kind of all we focus on is what are the simple numbers? What are our major benchmarks? We're completely, wildly transparent in how everybody's performing. The 3 people who got no leads yesterday came up to the front of the class today in our morning meeting and talked about why. We pulled them up, told them where their month numbers were, because they were all performing well. They just had shitty days. And then one kid was like, you know what? I wasn't prepared when the opportunity met me yesterday. I can honestly admit it. My head wasn't in the game, and I know the lead that I missed, et cetera, et cetera.
That's really powerful. I like that. Tell me a little bit more about this training that you do. In these weeks before you actually put somebody on the phone with a live lead, like you said, you don't want to just expose them unnecessarily to people's leads, but what does that program look like? What are the components of it, and how long does it really take to get to where they're ready to go?
Mark, one of the things I've said is if I wanted to really put some heat on the coaching space out there, I would enter into it. I'm not in the coaching space because I'm trying to run a business. But not that, anyways, but it is what it is. I said it.
It's out there.
It's out there. I've said it. Fuck it. Somebody felt like this. Anyways, but the whole point is I take kids who don't know what a soffit is, an awning, a faucet, a gutter, a shutter, a yard sign, and I turn them into phone savages. So I literally have to train them on real estate 101, sales 101, cold calling, et cetera, et cetera. So
the real estate piece of that alone has got to be tough, just given the lack of understanding of what's happening in the United States versus maybe what happens in Colombia. What's that like?
It's tough. It's even tough for me as a consumer here. Like when I rented my first place before I bought my place here, I was like, wait a minute, I got to pay the commissions? Like I'm the renter. What are you talking about? Like I got to pay you $2,000 for renting from what? So the whole thing's backwards here. Everything's backwards. But it is tough, but it takes time. And again, it's all about like advancement, calibration, advancement and testing. So day one, at the end of day one, there's a cool little test on the stuff that we covered. Day two. And so we have this really refined process. And it's almost like a school community. Internally, we built our own thing. If you know what school is, like Alex Hormozy, it's like a coaching platform. Yeah. So we have that here. We built out for ourselves where we hold everybody accountable for their performance and get them comfortable with standing in mock calls. We do so many mock calls. And they'll call with another agent here, and then we'll go live, and then we'll come back and we'll listen to some live calls, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say probably 3 weeks itself is being able to sound like an expert about real estate. Yeah. Getting rent roll from somebody who's got a multifamily property is not your average bear. Talking to somebody with a $700,000 house in San Diego is different than talking to somebody with a $40,000 house in Alabama. Yep. And so we just got to be able to help them navigate all those types of things.
It's interesting. You mentioned kind of like the standing up and just doing mock calls.
Yeah.
Once they're live, once they actually are on the floor, how much ongoing training is occurring? Is that like a daily thing? Or?
Yeah, it's definitely every morning we have a morning meeting, for sure. Like there's always morning meetings. Without fail, 100%, all of our days we do some level of training or motivations in the morning. It's probably 50-50. Today was a motivation day. I didn't have anything. I was inspired by something I read in a book, so I literally read some passages out of a book and tried to get them pumped up for the day. But we have a really, really good quality assurance department. And so the CG prior to this, I was so blessed. It was my first time ever speaking at CG, and I won a belt there for an AI CG thing that we built up.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. And so, but we have a really good QA department. So the bulk of our ongoing training comes from our QA department, finding opportunity zones, and every single lead that we qualify in a month gets listened. First by AI as a front pass, it highlights if there's any issues in a call or opportunity zones, then that quality assurance rep comes out and reads those, then they'll pull him into a room, and if it's a habit that's negative, that's appeared more than once, then they'll pull him and his team lead into a room, just so like everybody knows, and they'll have to sign off on a waiver or something. Maybe they used the incorrect anchor price, whatever it may be. So I would just genuinely say our ongoing training on a one-to-one cases is driven by results out of the QA.
Interesting. If you were to consider this kind of the difference between practice and game time, how much time is dedicated to ongoing practice versus being on the phone live?
So what we would consider that is role playing.
Yep.
And so our role playing, it's not as much as being live for sure. Typically role playing is predicated because of an issue, like that we pulled in a recording. So we'll pull that, like today, these kids, I also have a big refi mortgage campaign. Like I'm deep into the refi space right now too, because it's just insert product here. It's the same process, it's the same everything. But these kids just sounded so flat, like everything was monotone. So we talked about like no cost, no obligation. That's for that campaign. Setting up a rainy day fund, just verbiage that they may not regularly use. Yeah. And we had all these bullet points, and I made all of them go one by one by one by one by one to go through that and kind of freestyle it. And like this one girl, she was so flat as a pancake, but she was saying something so powerful. And I was like, you wouldn't tell, because it was something like, we're at such an interesting time, better than it's been in decades. And I was like, if you're at an interesting concert, the best concert you've been to in decades, is that how you would explain it to your friends? No. She was like, no, I would be like, this is the best concert I've been to in decades. I was like, I need that next time you pick up the phone. So yes, it just depends. But unfortunately, as much as I'd like to do more, honestly, we're mainly doing role playing because of issues that are arising, not as preventative as I should as a leader.
So that's interesting. I mean, you're really not only talking about the talk track, but even the inflection, things like that. Mm-hmm. How much of it is teaching them to be good listeners?
Teaching them to shut up. Just shut up. Shut them. They all have
Absolutely.
Talking problems. They all have talking problems.
Well, most salespeople have talking problems, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it is for sure. I think you have to be a good listener, second to being a good questioner, asking good questions.
I like that.
And so, I got to get that foundation right. Like the same girl, she said something like, so do you have any credit card debt? And I said, come on. How much credit card debt do you have?
Exactly.
It's just those simple things where once you've done it for so long, you would never ask a no question. And then you would ask that open-ended question with voice inflection. And so I just try to teach them to ride the roller coaster. Let's talk like you're talking to your aunt. Everybody, pretend like that seller is your aunt. What do you mean you don't want to sell? Come on. Whatever it may be, I want them to have fun on the phones. And so it's asking the good questions, shutting up, and actively listening to what's behind what they're saying.
Yeah, I mean, if I think about it in another frame, it's curiosity, right? It's like doing discovery and being curious about your prospect. Yeah.
And understanding, too, for me, it's like, all right, I'm calling people for the real estate campaign that I know have a really a terrible situation in their life.
Right.
I'm calling pre-foreclosure. I'm calling death, evictions. I'm calling everything. So they might not tell you their daughter's got cancer within the first 7 seconds. So let's listen and then ask a follow-up question. Can you tell me more about that? Do you mind sharing just a little bit more?
So let's keep going on that, because I mean, then it starts with that curiosity and the good questions, but then it's got to follow with, I think, some sort of empathy in order to make the connection, right? How do you train that?
I think it's common sense, right? And I think it also goes again back to this family member reference. When these guys are so in the zone and the guy's like, my wife just passed away 2 years ago, or 2 months ago, whatever, they're like, at best, they want to just say, I'm sorry to hear that. But I'm like, if that was your best friend you hadn't seen forever, dude, I'm so sorry. May I ask what happened? How long were you guys married? Because I want you to treat them the way that you'd want to be treated. And if you would just share that with somebody, what do you? And so it's just training them that, this is not a scary person. This is somebody that if you believe in energy, they can feel you through the phone. So let's ask the same thing you would ask somebody that you actually cared about. It's that thing by Mary Kay with that sign. I teach it. These kids have no clue who Mary Kay is. Yeah. I've had to pull up pictures of pink Cadillacs to show it to them, right? They don't even know. They don't even sell Cadillacs down here. But anyways, and I was like, Mary Kay's got this quote. She says, just treat everybody like they have a big sign around their neck that says, make me feel important. So that's one of our mantras here. So if you're going to make somebody feel important who just told you their spouse passed away, you'd have some follow-up questions that are low tone and curious because you actually care. You actually do care. How long?
Right.
Man.
Right. Well, I think, and that's, I guess, what maybe was my next question. I mean, I know with you, that's coming from a point of authenticity.
Yeah.
And in a sales organization, sometimes that can start to feel a little bit contrived. How do you go about just navigating that with your folks?
I think it only feels contrived if they don't believe in the product. Because if you do believe in the product, then it's a necessary tool to build value to be able to get them to the promise zone that you believe in. It's the same thing with being pleasantly persistent versus being a scumbag closer.
Yeah.
And so, I want them to push because they care about that person. And so over a certain period of time, those people like you're describing, they exist, they've come through here, and they weed themselves out or they get weeded out because the customers feel it over a certain period of time. Their resentment to those conversations gets higher and higher, and ultimately they crash and burn, and then they just waddle around till they go. And so I think if you believe, though, you never face that issue.
Is that also just built into your company core values and the thing that you bring to the company as the leader?
Yeah, I'm looking at them like passion, discipline, intelligence, etc. There's that famous quote that says, something along that, I'm so sorry, Mark, but it's something like, don't bring people to the shore and tell them to force them to build a boat. Take them to the shore and paint the picture of the vast sea and the golds and the riches. And so that's more my objective here, which is like, hey, the truth is you're going to get this small little commission check. Me too. But you know what's going to happen because you overcame their objections? You're going to send that person over to one of our local investors. He's going to help her out of that situation. There's going to be a roofer that's hired. There's going to be a sheetrock guy. And there's going to be a painting guy. And there's going to be, and I just really helped them really understand the butterfly effect of, hey, let's be honest. We're living in a developing country. You just helped 20-some different people put food on the plate because you didn't give up, and you helped that seller out of this really problem situation. So I think
that's really
if they
powerful.
know that.
I mean, because now you're creating a why, a mission that is much bigger than the commission check.
Amen.
Yeah, that's cool. Tell me a little bit about just kind of process. I mean, when you were when we were down at in Dallas for the Collective Genius event, you broke down a really nice framework for how to approach sales. I was wondering if you could maybe share a little bit about that with the audience in terms of how important is a framework and how did you settle on the framework that you built?
Yeah, I would say, Mark, for me, I was taught at a really young age that like a quality conversation or a quality consultation is really not that much different than like building a car. And so it's like the assembly line, right? Like I can't put a steering wheel on without a steering column. You can't do a steering column without, the chassis or whatever. You can't put the tires on until you have the axles, whatever it may be. And so like I was observational enough to be able to realize like every script or every training kind of has these same sections, these same parts of a consultation. And I've done enough in sales to know that when I skipped a piece, I screwed it all up. And so I just now have been in enough products and done enough things to be able to say, you know what, like I know exactly what should happen first and what should happen next. And as long as I do a version of these, curate it to the product and to the seller's or the customer's mindset. They could be a buyer or a seller, whoever a customer is. Like as long as I do these things, I'll be successful no matter what the campaign is.
Right.
And so that's why I came up with those like 6 or 7 bullet points.
How static or dynamic is that? Is that something that you constantly revisit and refine? Or do you find that the commonalities of that sales approach is, like you said, it's just is tested as time and you can stick to that?
It's a universal truth. So it existed before I got there. I'm just an observer.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool. I mean, which, then makes me ask, like, then so where do most salespeople go wrong? Because it seems like it'd be a pretty consistent fix.
The 2 places salespeople go wrong is what I call the pregame, which is how they're getting their mindset, they're getting focused beforehand, they study their customer, whatever it may be. Like, what are the things that I'm doing to have a winner's mindset? At my very first sales job, we had a mirror. And it was just called the winner's mirror. And before you went out there and greeted your customer, you would stand there, you could look at yourself, you could check yourself, but it was really just to be like, I'm going to go help these people, and I'm going to do this. And so, but that pregame is so important. Like, am I drinking the night before and I'm coming into this hungover? Did I actually have a good workout? Did I write out my goals this morning? These things matter actually more than any other thing out there. Because if I go into something with low energy and low ore, if you will, I'm going to screw it up. And then the other second most important out of everything is the trial closes. Because I need to extract these objections out if I haven't already owned them along the way. I need to extract these out before I get to the end. Because once you get to the end, yeah, it's cute, but if I can knock them out. So like those trial closes immediately preceding the actual close, I think are the 2 places most sales professionals screw up.
I like that. And another thing that you dropped when we were in Dallas was this concept of kind of planting seeds, not for the sake of elaborating on something right then, but being able to come back later and maybe water seeds that you already planted. Maybe share that anecdote a little bit with the audience.
It's so cool for me because it's like, oh, you just saw me and now you quit. Like, that's cool. It's like a first.
Hey, it was memorable. You're a memorable guy.
Thank you. And so I think I learned this one by happen chance, but what I first learned was like discovery questions to load a gun. And so what I would realize is I was asking quality questions, and if somebody was like, oh, my daughter has cancer or something like that, you wouldn't immediately jump up, well, the advantage with our product is this. And so like
right.
you would load your revolver full of these like hot buttons per se, and then later, when it was time, you could shoot those. And then I realized the opposite. It's like, oh, I could also plant seeds towards the beginning of my consultation, and later I might not pull that trigger, I may not water that plant, but being able to plant those seeds and have them there for me versus just at the very end when they're like, no, I might not do this, all of a sudden like, well, did you know that the real estate market's actually crashing in your area? It's like, no, if I've talked about that kind of throughout and maybe given a little bit of water, say like, yeah, it's been so crazy lately. Our phone's been ringing off the hook. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. I feel like everybody's trying to dump their properties. And then boom, that's it. Seeds planted. Let's roll.
Leave it. Yeah.
Just leave it. And I might not ever need to come back to it, but I just truly believe you got to load your gun and plant some seeds on your journey to the actual finish line.
That's really fascinating. I like that advice, and I think people can use that a lot more. And if you do that in an authentic way, then it serves even better. So,
can I, if I may?
Yeah, please.
There's a philosophy behind that I learned a long, long time ago. You tell them what you told them, then you tell them again. And so if you're in real estate, your seller has so much going on in their life. You shouldn't expect to be able to tell them your benefits one time and for it to fully sink. And so you're doing them a disservice by not, whatever's going on in the industry, whatever's going on with their concerns, planting those seeds and revisiting them with a little bit of water along the way, because they truly don't grasp it. And it takes a couple of times. People are busy. They're emotionally exhausted. They're mentally exhausted. So I think it's just being good to them by planting those seeds.
Yeah, Scott, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was another thing I took away was, I mean, you in your framework talk about like setting the stage and like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Here's the 3 steps we're going to take, and then I'm going to go take those steps, and I'm going to come back and talk about what we just accomplished in those steps. And that really resonated with me, because it's even transcends beyond sales. I mean, I think you can apply that same thing to maybe customer onboarding or anything else. Like, this is what we're going to do, and by being transparent and talking about what you're about to go through together makes everything flow so much more naturally.
Yeah. Even when we have new people come into the office for maybe a job interview, we want to let them know right up front, because I don't want that anxiety-filled person to get nervous because all of a sudden they just got hit with a typing test. And so I want them to know what's going to happen. Same thing when you're onboarding clients. Same thing when you're meeting new people, or people are coming to the house for the daughter's birthday party. Hey guys, hey parents, we're going to do this at 4, and then this is going to happen at 6, and at 7, the surprise guest, whatever it may be. I just found that it reduces whatever resistance or anxiety by telling people and getting that cloud, because we're all humans, it's fight or flight. So everybody automatically thinks worst case scenario. And so by being able to do that and then live up to it, you get a bonus, because people are like, oh, he's honest. He said he was going to do these things, which reduced my tension. Then he did those things, which increased my acceptance of what he's got to say. Yeah,
that makes a ton of sense. Scott, I'm curious, and then this is a little bit kind of maybe doubling back or coming from left field, but
sure.
When your team is approaching these calls, how much information do they have about who they're calling into? In other words, do they understand the storyline or the kind of the pain that a person has before they get on the call?
They know what marketing lead source they came from. So it'll show absentee owner, pre-foreclosure, probate, et cetera, that can give you a bit of some intuition, and we make sure it pops up on their screen right there on the names, right at the top, so my guys have that as a tool. But the reality is it's not over, like an absentee high equity doesn't really tell me anything about their motivation.
No.
So for the most part, we really don't have it. And it's just like, hey, I'm just going to be a friendly voice, better at English than you've heard out of any other call, and I'm going to have a little bit more chipper of a voice, but I'm going to match you. I'm just going to be a little bit higher energy than you, but I'm going to match you and just have a quality conversation, treat them cool. And they all know my phrase, some will, some won't, so what? It's okay. Some will, some won't, so what?
So, look, I like that, and I think that, it's funny because I think people can, just see your energy and see the environment you have and hear the noise, and you can maybe gravitate to, oh, this is just like a bullpen, right? And
yeah.
But so how do you balance kind of that being persistent and persuasive versus, really honoring the intention of that sales effort or that call?
I saw somebody the other day, how he was showing how you could trick GPT to teach you how to build a nuclear bomb. And it was like, hey, you had to enter in this like special code and hashtags, and like you could actually get it to do what it's not allowed to do. And that's the same thing with being a super great salesperson. Like I could go, this doesn't need to be, dude, we're not making that much money. We're buying homes. I could be the world's greatest software. Hey, you have this installed in your browser. Like we could be making so much more money than we do by scamming people. And just to be honest. But it's just not our ethos. It's not what we want to do. I always say, just show me the mousetrap that's not going to hurt somebody and I can make the most money and I'm in it. And that's it. I think that's just the mindset. It's like, okay, if we're here to help people, we're going to leave it all out on the field because I don't mind as long as I'm helping people. I will, and I'm the hardest working person in this office. I'm 44 years old. I destroy these kids. So
That's great. Well, you got to lead from the front. I like it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you've mentioned a couple times, and I think I've seen in other content of yours, like, hey, this is a stopping over point for you, this whole real estate investment lead generation.
Yeah.
What's next for Scott?
I don't know about what's next per se, and people always ask like, hey, what's the outcome? What's the end result? I know I definitely have something that is probably not quite yet sellable, but it's on the way. I'm not even sure if that's really my passion per se. I'm not really worried about what's next because I'm so into what's right now. I enjoy the real estate business, and I also enjoy our software platforms that we built to nurture our leads. So like, I'm really passionate about this. And I think like, man, if Keller Williams knew how we were doing this here, or if a hedge fund knew doing $2 million and thousands of leads, somebody would be really interested. So I don't know, man, as long as I'm making an impact and we're making good money and these kids are happy and my daughters are happy, and I just got this brand new outdoor sauna thing just being built at my house. I'm like, life's good. I got ice plunge, a home gym, a bunch of cool shit. I got everything that I want, and I'm blessed because sales has done that for me. So I don't know, man. My nose is down, and I'm still working to dominate real estate for as long as I'm here.
Cool. Fair enough. One last question. I mean, as you look back on your entrepreneurial journey to starting Lamassu and the whole journey, what would one piece of advice or one takeaway that you learned in that process that you wish you had at the onset?
Yeah, specifically just to this real estate is what I'll answer.
Sure,
over the whole thing, it is just because it may be more relevant. But I definitely got hooked on the drug of wholesaling because it was quick and I was used to that. Like, hey, just 15K, 30K, whatever. But I couldn't get off of it. It was like you see people on the corners of the streets begging for money. Like, I gotta get another piece of paper to flip. And I took way too long to start taking them for myself. And, for in my market. And so I wholesaled too much in the beginning. And I would say that's it, man. It's just like, I really should have learned comping better, that side, creative financing better, et cetera, earlier. And I would have had an even bigger portfolio than I do now, for sure.
Yeah, good takeaway there. And the learning out of that now has been kind of like buy, hold, and building more of a hold portfolio?
So we're still in the learning process because we have a lot of buy and holds. And we were real heavy in Airbnbs last year's, and that's petered away. And the only thing that I'm making money on, and I say this on other podcasts, is my co-living properties, like pad split. I'm like, we're doing really great. And so our objective with this new push right now in Richmond, Virginia, is to go heavy into the co-living side of it because it's one of those markets that needs a lot of inventory and they're well heeled there. So I'm really excited about that, and some flips as well too. But it's just like, I've got a lot of this covered, which is we know how to generate leads, we know how to close them, and then it's just finding the best outcomes for those while also standing in the shadow of so many great people. Like, I'm not my biggest client. Like, I got way bigger clients than I am, so just following the journey and following in everybody's shadow for a little bit.
Fantastic. Scott, thanks so much for taking the time. This has been a great conversation, and I know you've got a whole room of folks there that need some more coaching and yes, motivation, so we'll let you go there. But how can people get a hold of you and find you online?
Yeah, so on Instagram, at Scott Morse, MORSE, so at Scott Morse, REI. And then I'd say just follow because I post all kinds of cool stuff from the office here. So you can see it's like a real business and it's like super awesome, I think. And then at LamassuLeads.com is our website, so you could go there and listen, even if you're not interested in services, but you just want maybe some analytics on the market, and you're like, hey man, I was thinking about it, like what do you see in Nashville, Tennessee? What do you see in San Diego, California? I'm an open book, so as long as I have time, I'd help anybody in any way possible to be able to understand their marketing channels better.
Fantastic. Appreciate that. Actually, I got one more question for you.
Sure.
How'd you come up with Lamassu? And Lamassu is like a deity that protects gods, and it's like a man, bull, bird. Like, how'd you come up with that?
Dude, you're the best. Because this is my last two businesses, I believe in mascots in all businesses, like period. I'm like really just like a sports team. Everybody's got a mascot that cares. The teams that matter care. Anyways, and so I researched. Last time it was a lion. The time before that, it was an eagle. So I was like, yo, when was the first time ever in human history that a lion and eagle were ever found together, ever? Like you said, it was a deity named Lamassu, but had a human face. And I said, man, I can't be putting my face on this. I'll mess up this whole logo. So that's the reason why we did the logo like that, and that's how I came up with Lamassu, because this is my grand finale, and I just wanted to represent what I believe in, which we tell people is we're not hyenas, we don't go for scraps, we're not laughing, we're the king of the damn safari, or the savannah, and then we're not ducks, we don't wait for breadcrumbs, we're eagles, we fly high, and so that's the mindset that all these kids have as being a Lamassu agent.
Super cool. Super cool. Awesome. Hey, if you found value in this episode, please subscribe. And if you want to, share this with friends and colleagues that can also get value. Scott, thanks again.
You're very welcome, brother.